how proud he was of me and how much joy that I brought to him. Little did I or he know that that would be the last time we would ever speak to each other. That hours later he would be laying dead in the snow. We're supposed to be on slide 10. I don't know which one that is. It wasn't until that evening that I was made aware by the Pete Santilli live stream. He's a YouTuber that does personal media, that somebody had been hurt in Oregon. And I immediately got all my 11 siblings to that live stream to watch. You do slide 11. I called my trusted media friend, Sherilyn Eager, and she came right to my house to help me assess the situation. We do 12. Within an hour of her arrival, she found herself holding me as I fell to the floor in utter shock and emotional hysteria. As my husband frantically packed our bags, my father had been shot. That night we drove home to be with Mom. You go to 13. For those new to my father's assassination story, it began years ago as he practiced daily diligence in the things that developed his mind, his body, and his spirit. Such practices became his habit of the heart, which enabled him to be the powerful voice that America now knows him to be. Benjamin Franklin once stated that virtue is not secure until its practices has become habitual, and only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. Now, every human being has their habit of the heart. Either it's for virtue or for vice. Today we're going to talk about the type of habit of a heart that invites the blessings of heaven, liberty. Before we dive into that meat of the discussion, I wish to paint the picture of my father's habit of the heart and why he ended up in Oregon and what he and the other cowboys were doing in Oregon. Slide 14. It's important to note how my dad was an ordinary man, much like you or I. In listening to my Uncle Guy speak about him, he impressed upon my mind the importance of this, because a lot of people put him on a pedestal and then therefore can walk away feeling like they can't quite measure up. But it's important for us to realize how he is imperfect and he made lots of mistakes, just like we all do. And so I'm going to resist the temptation to not just tell you how awesome he is, and I'm going to tell you about some of his quirky things. So when Mom was gone, us kids pretty much lived off of potatoes or oatmeal. We had raw oatmeal, cooked oatmeal, fried oatmeal. I swear, when I became an adult and moved out, I said I will never eat oatmeal again in my life. But I do now. Dad was not a honey-do list husband. Our house was not kept up. If the toilet went wrong, I had to fix it, or Mom had to hire a plumber, and X, Y, and Z. If the cooler went out, we were hot, or we hired somebody. It just wasn't his thing that he did. He was very passionate, and that can be a virtue and a vice. Now, anybody who's married to a passionate person knows exactly what I'm talking about, and I won't dive into that more. Being his oldest child, I will tell you he ran a tight ship. I look at my youngest sister, and I saw the way she would converse with Dad, and I just thought to myself, oh my heavens, how are you even talking to him in this way without getting in trouble? And with that being said, I realized that parents learn through practice. And I'm learning that too because I have 4 kids of my own. So I was his little guinea pig. That's why I'm so awesome. So he did make lots of mistakes, but he left a powerful example that life is about getting back up and trying again. So slide 15. Dad was a true cowboy. Growing up, much of his time was spent outdoors, enjoying the peace that only comes from the country. Much of modern city folk traditions were not important to him. And this picture, this slide, kind of depicts that. When he married my mom, city girl, their first New Year's Eve together, she was so shocked that he had no idea what the New York Times ball drop was. He's like, a ball drop? What is this ball drop? So, city girl married country boy. So slide 16. Ever since he was a young boy, he dreamed of becoming a cattle rancher. He told me the story of the creation of his brand. When he was 7 or 8, he would doodle on his school notepad and daydream of how it was going to be, and he knew his initials needed to be in there, LV, and he understood as a child that every cool rancher had a bar in their brand, so it ended up being LV Bar. That's how that got developed. He loved the land, the cool breeze on his face, the smell of the sagebrush, being with the animals roaming the land, the sand under his feet. He wanted nothing more than to pass his heritage to his family. After much blood and suffering and tears, he acquired his lifelong dream of having a ranch, all the while still participating in his habit of the heart, developing his mind, body, and spirit. He always witnessed how things testified of Christ. I remember he often told me how his cattle would bring his mind to his Savior, in that the cattle live and die, that we might partake and live. Dad took great care of his body. Every morning, around 5 or 6 a.m., minus the weekends, he'd be up there working out, and right after scripture study. And as a teenager, I remember being so creeped out, because he wore those shorts that were really short, and they were cutoffs, jeans, and just seeing his legs really creeped me out. And he wore the really tight, tall, high socks, and I just was so embarrassed for him, and he just didn't care what people thought, but I just remember just really being embarrassed for him. But he did it every day. He was a history, political, and scripture connoisseur. Dad didn't go anywhere without a book in his hand, and often we would find his nose in the scriptures several times a day. He loved his God. This love is what motivated his use of agency in every constituent of his life. When in personal counsel with him, he would often say, "Daughter, it only matters if God's smiling." It was his daily diligence that developed and nurtured his deep love and loyalty to God. As byproduct, he could not help but love freedom more than life itself. After all, Jesus Christ and our Lord and our Heavenly Father are the true authors of liberty. And these are, I'm going to play for you one of his most recent favorite quotes. Mom read it, but it's awesome hearing it in his own voice. So slides 22, we can push play.
A man that I respect a lot by the name of Ezra Taft Benson. And he asked that question. He said, "Is it morally right to resist tyranny?" And then he answers his own question by saying, "I believe," or he said, "with all the fervor of my soul, I believe that God intended man to be free." And then he went on to say that rebellion against tyranny is a righteous cause. So there you have it. That's exactly how I feel. It's good to read and hear other people that feel the same way. He went on to say that the fight for freedom is God's fight. So when a man stands for freedom, he stands with God. And as long as he stands for freedom, he stands with God. And even if he stands alone, he still stands with God. A man will be eternally vindicated and rewarded for his stand for freedom. A man that...
The more he studied, the more he began to recognize how tyranny's iron fist was intimately in the lives of the American people. This weighed heavily on his soul because he was a man of principle. As a God-fearing man, he understood his responsibility and obligation. He had to stand in his respective sphere for the cause of liberty. His sphere to stand for liberty was in ranching. The grass that fed his cattle on his ranch was a personal property right by prior appropriation. He purchased that grazing right from the previous owner. He did not purchase this grass from the BLM. That property right existed before the BLM even was developed. Dad asked himself why it was that an unelected bureaucrat had power to dictate and regulate, by force, how a rancher manages his ranch. This issue is not about cows. This issue is not about grass. This issue is about property rights. If you do not have property rights, you do not have freedom. A society cannot remain at peace when the right to control personal property rights is infringed upon. At gaining this understanding through daily study, he no longer in good conscience could endorse the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, as the managers of his ranch. For it never was theirs to manage in the first place. He discovered how the Bureau of Land Management was actually undermining the principles of liberty found in the Constitution of the United States, and he was only able to discern this because of his daily diligence. He had worked to gain that knowledge. He decided this is how he could make a stand for liberty. He understood how important it was for him to honor his personal property rights, because if he did not, they would be lost. In pondering about the firm line that he was drawing in the sand, he could not help but consider what was at stake. He had dreamed his entire life about becoming a cattle rancher. He wanted to pass this heritage down to his children. But despite his wishes and his passions, he still was a principled man. Here's a recording of my dad publicly announcing his cancellation of his contracts with the BLM on the Brian Hyde show 9 months ago.
Obviously, Clive Bundy fired the BLM as his land manager some time ago. He was on to what was going on, and he fired them. Where do you stand on this in terms of your fees, your compliance with all the mandatory terms and conditions?
Yes. This is where I've had a struggle inside myself. I'm trying to come to grips with trying to be consistent with my own beliefs. Currently, I am current on all my grazing fees. They're in the Constitution, but I am current on them. There is mandatory terms and conditions that we are supposed to sign. I am not in violation of any of my mandatory terms and conditions. And so what I've been struggling with is how can I say that I believe this and then continue to pay my grazing fees, sign these mandatory terms and conditions, and be consistent with what I believe? Well, I can't. And so I personally need to be consistent, or I need to just sit down and be quiet. And so I'm announcing that I will no longer continue my relationship with the BLM. And again, these are good men. I've had nothing but positive experience with my range cons. I like them. But this is so separate from our personal relationship. And so I will no longer pay these fees, nor will I any longer sign these mandatory terms and conditions. Now you're beginning to cross the Rubicon, and now you're beginning to kind of rattle the cage of the big dog. And this can mean everything to me. You know, I can lose everything I have. Private can lose everything it has.
Well, you saw firsthand the kind of intimidation and projection of force that the government was willing to resort to last year.
Yeah. But if you start making decisions based on what you're going to lose or not lose, or who's going to win or not win, you're no longer standing above principles. And go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. We've got to go.
President Edward Taft Benson warned the people that if we would become like God, knowing good and evil, then we had best find out what is undermining us, how to avoid it, and what we can do about it. Benson prayed, "May it never come to pass that my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." Much of our citizens suffer from a lack of knowledge in regard to natural rights and property rights. It is this lack of knowledge that has enabled the government to successfully pass legislation to support and create programs that undermine the principles of liberty found in the Constitution, because the people are unable to discern the undermining elements of of liberty because the very principles of liberty are not fully understood. Here's a recording of my father explaining what natural rights and property rights are.
Our rights established. And we can look at, let's begin at natural rights. An easy way to try to explain this is how a right is established is using something we're all very familiar with, and that's standing in line. Okay, we've all stood in line. We stand in line at the DMV, we stand in line at McDonald's, we stand in line at a theater. So we all stand in line, so we know what that is. So when we show up there and say we're the first one in line, we stand there and we create a right. And we create a right because we were, it was our preemptive right. I am first in line, and the legal term for that is prior appropriation. And so you go and you stand in that line, and you have created a right to be there. And that's called natural law. It's natural, it's self-evident, as the forefathers would say. We see that, we recognize that. Now the second thing to create that right is you must use it. If you don't use it, you will lose it. And for example, the line gets very long and you say, hey, I want to go outside because I'm tired of standing there. And you come back and you say, hey, I was first in line. And the guy said, well, wait, you left. You lost your right to be, you're no longer preempted. You left, you lost it. Now the third thing you need to create a right, a property right, is you must defend it. So you're standing there, the line is very long, and in comes a bigger person. And he says, I'm not going to stand in the back of this line because I'm big. And so he walks up in front and he pushes you out of the way. He says, I'm in front. Now you can have one or two things you do. You can say, oh, that's not fair, and then retreat and stand back behind him, and in which case you lose your right. Or you can defend your right. And if you defend your right, then you can try to say, no, you must leave. And you may even get other people that will say, yeah, that's not right. You got to leave. And you may get other people that believe that you have a right that will support you. But whether they support you or not, unless you defend your right, you lose it. And Thomas Jefferson said, we have only those rights we defend. Unless.
Because we're running short on time, I'm going to stop it there. The Declaration of Independence states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which in other words is the byproduct of our labors, our property. My dad's brother Guy helped me to recognize how the Declaration of Independence is a three-way covenant. First, we must acknowledge God, to honor and respect Him. Then we covenant with our neighbor to respect each other. And finally, proper government derives its power from the people, and so too must honor each individual's rights. The BLM is a real threat to personal property. The BLM is undermining the principles found in the rule of law. That sacred document, our Constitution of the United States of America, the very creation of the Bureau of Land Management, is a manifestation of the government not honoring the covenant with the people. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 clearly states where government has authority to own land. Government should have limited powers. Through my dad's daily diligence, he gained an understanding on how the proper rule of law was to oppose the tendency to plunder and how all its measures should be in favor of property. His understanding of the mission of law enabled him to recognize how the BLM was undermining the principles of liberty, as the policies had converted the law into an instrument of plunder. Converted the law into an instrument of plunder. In regard to property rights, it is through the BLM that legal plundering, isn't that crazy, has become systemized. Can we wrap our mind around that? Legal plundering becoming systemized. The BLM's heavy fist hadn't yet reached my father's ranch like it had the Bundys in Nevada or the Harmons in Oregon. He was in good standing. So why did my dad go to Oregon? The first great commandment is to love the Lord with all thy soul and with all thy mind. The second great commandment is like unto the first. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. After drawing his own firm, hard line in the sand, understanding the risks at hand, he would watch the stories of other ranchers to see how he might assist them in learning how to defend their property rights. He was disgusted with the horrific terror the Hammond family had suffered. Being a God-fearing and principled man that he was, he could not, in good conscience, do nothing for this family. So on Saturday, January 2nd, his New Year's resolution, I guess you could say, he decided to attend a peaceful protest to support the Hammond family. It was not until he got in Oregon that he found out that he was going to be staying long-term, participating in civil disobedience. We can push play on this.
All of what's happening over in Bend, Oregon with that ranching family over there, the Hammond family, and I'm pretty upset with what the BLM has done to them. Actually, I'm really angry. They had a prescribed burn that was allowed, got off onto 100 acres, burned 100 acres of BLM. Just range land, you know, 100 acres. They'll come back just as green next year as ever. They threw him in jail. They fined him a tremendous amount of fines. And now it looks like they're facing 5 more years in prison. These are real lives. These are real people. By dang, I'm angry about it. America, how long are we going to put up with this type of stuff? You know, it's time to stop. You know, here in this area, BLM's good to the ranchers here. They don't have a problem here out on the strip. Some good, decent people there. But the question is, then, are they doing good? The question is, should they have the power to do good? If they've got the power to do good, they've got the power to do bad. They got the power to help, they have the power to destroy. They shouldn't have the power, period. Because look what they're doing over to that family, the Hammond family. It's outrageous. I'm pretty dang angry about it. I'd like to use a lot stronger language.
But he refrained. He didn't use strong language. You're welcome to go to his YouTube channel and see all his videos. But if they have the power to do good, they have the power to do bad. They shouldn't have the power, period. We're going to do, I have a lot more prepared, but I'm going to do this one last 2 slides and we'll be done. For those who may not be familiar with the Hammond story, the family had been sentenced with double jeopardy, a direct violation of our Constitution. They had been fined $400,000 in fines, again, a clear violation of our Constitution. Not to mention how the Hammond family was forced to give right of first refusal to the BLM. Sounds like conspiracy to me to gain possession of their land. After all due process, measures had been exhausted weeks before rally in hopes to assist the Hammond family, my dad and some other virtuous men who also had participated in their daily diligence, getting that habit of the heart. These cowboys were peacefully participating in civil disobedience to petition the government for a redress of grievances, which is our First Amendment right. We have authority to do that. When dealing with an abusive, powerful system, the options for redress are limited, and if you're waiting for permission, you're never going to get it. And I'm going to end with quoting Martin Luther King. When he was incarcerated, he wrote a letter explaining why he decided to participate in civil disobedience, and this is what he said. Isn't negotiation a better path? You are quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Non-violent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. My citing the creation of tension as part of the work of a non-violent register may sound rather shocking, but I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there is a type of constructive, non-violent tension which is necessary for growth. That is exactly what my dad and the Bundy boys were doing. They were participating in needful civil disobedience, what Martin Luther King called direct action. And it was to force the community to no longer neglect and ignore the atrocities, oppression, tyranny that was transpiring in their community. And isn't that exactly what they accomplished? Didn't they do that? Is America, even other nations now, looking on rural town Burns, Oregon? Yes, they accomplished their goal. And I hope those people who are in position to make changes will do so. And I'm so sad that I can't give the rest of my presentation because it was going to tie it all together. But I understand we're on a time frame, so thank you for hearing what I had to say.
And the Oregon State Police thought that they would end this movement by assassinating Lavoy Finicum. Little did they know, they have just created 11 little Lavoys. Is going to come forward now. We're going to be going a little bit over. I hope that we'll be okay with the building. But Shauna is going to explain exactly what they were teaching the people up there. You know, there's all kinds of perception. What was going on up there, what you saw on television looked like a bunch of really scary people walking around with their long rifles and heavy artillery and scaring everybody, right? But the bulk of their day was not that at all. In fact, there were many different elements that were at the refuge, many of whom weren't even involved with what their intent was from inside that refuge. And there were even agent provocateurs up there that were inciting violence. This is what our government has become. And so Shauna's going to explain her experience.
Thank you. I want to, because of lack of time, I'm not going to actually do that presentation, and Tara has done a wonderful job, and I have to say, and to Jeanette, they have done a super job. I want to address you. So, I was here before when we had talked about the Bundys. I was here with Cliven, and I had written a book about the Bundy Ranch. And a few days ago, I had posted something on Facebook to have people go somewhere. Anyway, and at that point, I received a phone call. And they said, get off the internet. So I did. And I had to go to court, and they allowed me to come by phone because they were going to try to ease up the bracelet situation, which they did, by the way. That's why I'm here. But they added another stipulation, and it was more or less a gag order. I wasn't allowed to speak about the case. I'm not allowed to speak about co-defendants. I said, okay. Then the next day, after I read the order, I asked everybody, what do you think this means? Does that mean I can't say anything at all? I asked my attorney, does that mean I can't speak? I can't use my phone, what does this mean? Oh no, she said, you can talk about a lot of things. I said, we have elections coming up. We have bills that have to be passed and bills that have to be stopped. We have people that have to be elected. And how can I not do my civil duty? She said, oh, you can do that. You just can't talk about the case. Okay? So, I got on Facebook and people had sent me things, right? And I pushed share, because I don't know how to do Facebook. I don't know anything about anything. And I pushed share. At midnight, when I was sharing, my attorney called me. Get off the computer! And they made me take down my Facebook yesterday morning. And I was really not happy. So, I called a friend who was, some of you might know her. Has anybody heard of Chris Ann Hall? Oh, yeah. I said, what do you think about this? And she said, I'm going to show you. Maybe I'm going to show you. Oh, suddenly it has disappeared. That is really weird. That's odd, really. Anyway, she called. I called and I said, what do you think about that? And she says, are you kidding? They're taking away the First Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. She said, what did your attorney say? I said, she's going to file an appeal, but I don't know what good that's going to do, because by the time we get back to court, then what can I do? I said, how am I going to defend myself? Because of all the lies that are being told about us, how are we supposed to tell the truth? Doesn't truth matter? Aren't we looking for truth and justice? Don't we have justice any longer? This afternoon, just before I came, my attorney called and said, the judge has received thousands, no, I have to say millions of phone calls today. And then I went back and looked at my phone, and Chris Ann Hall had already sent me this link that she had put out today about the First Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. And you might like to go read it. So go look her up. I was going to read it to you, but it's disappeared. I had it 2 minutes ago. And she said, she gave out the judge's phone number. And the clerk's phone number. And I'm here to tell you that you matter. We feel your prayers. The miracles are never ceasing. God is in the fight. It is his fight. It is the fight between good and evil. Some people say one of the weird things I put out was a counterclaim. It's okay, because you see, what's the symbol of evil? And what's the symbol of God? That's all it is. What side do we stand on? This is the sifting between good and evil. And that there is not going to be any in the middle. What side do you stand on? I am here to tell you that we prayed a lot, every day, day and night. We pray still, day and night. Your prayers matter. We feel them. I did get word yesterday they were coming to arrest me. But I called my attorney and we headed it off. I want you to know, like LaVoy, we love the Lord. His family loves the Lord. My family loves the Lord. Each of you, it isn't a religion. It is the difference between good and evil. There were lots of people there that came because they loved the Lord. They're listening to the Spirit. And each of you, just like I told you in my book, in the Last Rancher Standing, God was there. He is there. And each of you have a responsibility. And we have been taught to listen to the Spirit, to know what your job is. I don't know what your job is. I'm only trying to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm not perfect, and I have to apologize that I was swearing in that video, because I tell you what, I had no idea the whole world was going to see it, and especially my kids. But God is in charge. Find out what you're supposed to be doing. Get on your knees. He will protect us. And things happen the way they're supposed to happen. I know that for sure. And we have a lot of people still suffering. But it's in the Lord's hands. Please keep praying. We feel it. It gives us strength. We know where your hearts are. May God bless you. I am so worried about House Bill 276 that passed. People, please keep vigilant. Keep vigilant, because we cannot lose the battle because we're lacking, because we're sleeping, because we're not teaching our children. I went home and took my kids and brought them for a family home evening, and I taught them the lesson that we were teaching up there on the Constitution. We have to go back to the very basics. Tara showed you some of that LaVoy was speaking about. I'm trying to put that out where people can get to it. But it's simple, and it teaches you the basics, because nobody knows anymore. But I want you to know that I pray for this country. I pray for our leaders. And we can only do it with love. Christ loved even his enemies. And we have to do it with love. And we have to do it with his help. Thank you for letting me come.
Jeanette and Tara, if they will come up to the front here, and you can sit here during the questions. And if you have questions that you have not yet submitted, please do so right away, and you can give them to Dan, okay? So I also want to let you know that LaVoy's incredible book is over there, brilliant, and also Shauna Cox's narrative in her book of what happened at the Bundy Ranch is very important. Somebody suggested that I explain what HB 276 is and what's happened, and our governor has just signed it. And we've been called all kinds of names. We've even been accused, because we took a public stand on our radio show against this bill, We've been accused of getting funding from George Soros. That's how desperate they are to discredit people who are trying to speak the truth. So at any rate, what this bill does, and it's now law, is it establishes another unelected bureaucracy of 11 people appointed by the governor, and it's another agency, and it is not a BLM, it is a DLM. All right, so we're duplicating what happens in Washington, D.C. now in Utah, and it doesn't solve the problem. It's going, it takes away some of the rights of the sheriff, who is the authority, the enforcement authority in the county, and that goes way back. But at any rate, that's what's going on there. And you say there's line item veto. What do we do?
Line item veto is interesting because that means the governor can veto certain lines of any bill and just strike them to keep the rest of the bill. And the lands bill was to take the authority and the ownership of the federal lands back to Utah. And everybody thought that was a great idea, but snuck into that bill, as Charlotte indicated, was a provision that created a new agency that took the law enforcement final jurisdiction away from the sheriff and gave it to an unelected body run by the governor's office. And when I called the governor's office to complain, the secretary kindly told me, yeah, I know you're complaining about this bill, and I've had 1 million calls already today. We've had tons of people call, and she quoted me. I didn't even have to tell her. It's these lines in the bill. She gave me the line numbers. The governor's office knows exactly what it just did, and he had the power to strike the onerous, tyrannical parts from that bill, and he did not. I'll turn this back over to Cheryl.
Okay, we have some very good questions of each of these speakers. The first is, can you tell us something about the voice? This is for you, Jeanette. Can you tell us something about the voice, feelings, and convictions about the relationship? Oh, actually, no, this is here. Okay. About the relationship and necessity of personal virtue to maintaining our liberties.
It's a great question. That was the back end of my speech. I went into great depth talking about the habit of the heart and how it can either be a virtuous habit or a vice, and how only a virtuous people are capable of freedom, and how my father lived a virtuous life and therefore was enabled through his Creator to be a powerful voice, to stand for liberty, which is the Spirit of God, or the Spirit of Jesus Christ, the true author of liberty. And so what was the question? Does that cover it? Yes, and I was going to admonish all of you to assess your life, because we cannot give that which we do not have, okay? So I want you to take, I was going to state it as I'm going to be politically incorrect right now, okay? So prepare yourself. Do you have some repenting to do? Are there some things in your life that are not in accordance with God's laws? We all have this. We're all human. It's okay. But we need to use our agency appropriately to take care of it. And that's part of being a virtuous people. And if we have our lives in order in all the constituents, in our health, in our finances, in our spirit, then we are more enabled to give for this great cause. And so I urge you, please take courage, because it does take courage. Take courage to look at yourself honestly and to start making the changes that you need to do so that you can be more virtuous and therefore more capable of freedom and therefore more capable of helping others to do the same.
Okay, a question for Jeanette. I'm going to put two questions together here because they're very similar. It's a question about whether the gun that the boy had was registered or whether it was stolen.
The gun was not stolen. How's that for an answer? My son gave him. The gun was not stolen. My son gave it to him for Christmas, and that's how he got that gun. There's a lot of misconception and misinformation out there. I think it once said that all 11 of our children were foster children that we just slaved out on the ranch. They just don't check their facts. It would be easy to find out that we have 11 children of our own and had other children in the home that we took care of. That's just one little thing. But it was a legal gift that he received from my son.
Now, a question for Shauna Cox is, this person would like you to tell us about your son in that situation.
Well, he's my son, but he's my son-in-law. It was an accident. It was, the timing was the Lord's timing. My daughter had left the shop. It just happened to be that same day that they had come to my home and taken all the weapons away so I could go home and taken them to the shop. And on my way, which I had no idea that they'd even done that because I haven't spoken to my family, but anyway, I could get in trouble with that statement, so just kind of lose it. He had been working on his backhoe, and he went in. It was very cold, and they were inside the shop, and they had built a fire in their wood stove, and my daughter had to get the kids up to the house because it was getting late and they had to go to school. So the shop is down below their home, down the hill, and she went up, and he was still sitting in the chair, getting warm, and said he'd be up in a little bit. And when she got the kids to bed, she waited and called and waited and called, and no answer on the phone. So she thought he was out and working on the backhoe. And about 20 minutes later, her son, who's 12, Gage, had walked into the living room and suddenly saw all these flashing red lights. And there was a fire truck and a whole bunch of police cars down below, and then they saw the smoke. It was a horrible, horrible accident. He'd fallen asleep in the chair. They'd just given him some new medication for his back. So he was in a deeper sleep than normal. The dog that would have been with him had gone up to the house with him, who would have been able to wake him. I didn't know anything about this until I was on my way home. An hour into it, I got a phone call. And my husband told me there was an accident. And my daughter needed me desperately. I called her. And she was in tears. She was in hysterics. And she said, "Mom, I tried to open the door, it was so hot. I opened the door and the flames hit me in the face, they singed my hair. And I tried to crawl on the ground because I could see there was an air pocket, because I knew he was in there." She was hysterical. And I wanted to get home as fast as I could. 2 hours later, in the middle of the night, I received a phone call from my attorney that said, "You have to come back." That was the biggest, hardest decision of my life. visit with her every day. We spend time. Yesterday we started learning how to play the harmonica. It's a tragedy. But that's what life is. We have our ups, we have our downs, we have our challenges, and God never said it was going to be easy. He just said it would be worth it.
I'm going to answer this question because I have some background in computers and the internet. When I share the post, it is passed on with sexual content on the site. How can I stop that? So I want you to understand something about YouTube and Facebook and other services that you might be using. The recommendations that you see on the side of whatever video or post that you're sharing are generated by an algorithm that is trying to get inside your head or whoever has been using your computer. So, and also the algorithm is trying to figure out what it thinks is popular at the time and also what might pique your interest. So we all know that those types of, that subject is of great interest to a lot of people on the internet. So YouTube, Facebook, whoever is going to think that that might be something you might click on. So it might have something to do with the activities that you're doing on your computer, what you see on the side of whatever post or YouTube video you're looking at, or whoever else is using your computer. It might have something to do with that, but it might also have something to do with the internet users at large.